You know, the Lone Gunmen have been around for a bit at this point, and do we really know anything about them? Yeah, they're Mulder's friends and they're a trio of goofballs, but who are the Lone Gunmen? How did they become the Lone Gunmen? Well, today we're going to answer that question when we take a look at Unusual Suspects, Episode 3 of Season 5. Premiering November 16th, 1997, Unusual Suspects is about a plot by the US government against its own people or something. But it doesn't matter, it's about the Lone Gunmen. The episode kicks off with the SWAT team in Baltimore surrounding a warehouse of some sort. I can only imagine what kind of super secret ops are taking place inside. This hat makes this guy look like he has a 5-head. The SWAT team finds a rather large pool of blood and then strange moaning coming from a cardboard box. Just sounds like some homeless loving to me. It's actually a naked Mulder saying they're here over and over, which honestly for him sounds like a typical Saturday night.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Turn around, slowly!
We didn't do it.
Do what?
Imagine thinking these three dorks are any kind of threat. This is honestly one of the most confusing openings to an episode, because I have no idea what the hell is going on. Anyways, the Lone Gunmen are being held in the homicide unit because these guys are definitely known as violent murderers.
With that long blonde hair, you'll be the first one in here that gets traded for cigarettes.
Alright, so the Lone Gunmen aren't exactly buddy-buddy as of yet. Frohickey and Langley even blame Byers for getting them thrown in here. Byers is the first to be interrogated, and there's something about this detective that seems familiar. There's a lot that needs to be answered here because we've got a naked Mulder screaming about aliens, a pool of blood, and Byers talking about a woman who may have been taken. Of course, this means we have to go a bit back in time. At a computer and electronics show in Baltimore, Byers is working a booth for the FCC because he's clearly a narc. No time for narking, however, because who's this? Also, am I the only one that finds it funny that she's walking under a sign that says Super Racks?
Would you like a button?
Ooh, what a fumble. Byers isn't about to give up that easily, however, so he tells his buddy, who's super focused on Dig Dug, that he's taking a break. Unfortunately, he's not very good at being sneaky. This mystery woman then runs into Melvin Frohickey, a man with more sexual prowess than even the Greek god Eros himself. Instead, he tries to sell her some gadget that'll get her free HBO. He's got a little competition, however, because Langley butts in and tries to talk this woman into buying his gadget instead. All they end up doing is scaring this poor woman away because they clearly have no riz. Am I right, my fellow kids? Byers then awkwardly bumps into her because again, he's terrible at sneaking.
She's very cute.
Yes, she is.
Okay, now ask the lady her name. Instead, he asks if she needs any help because she looks kinda frazzled. She then goes on with a story about how her 3-year-old daughter was kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend, who ditched her after he found out she was pregnant. I understand Byers thinks this woman is attractive and everything, but I'm not really sure he's the one up for this kind of task. She claims this very dangerous ex-boyfriend is in the Baltimore area, which is why she's there. But instead of looking for help from a random guy she's never met, why not try the police again? She hands Byers a paper with the word ARPANET, which is some government defense thingy, but she thinks it might help her find her daughter.
I can go online, try and find out for you.
Would you? I would really appreciate that.
Byers finally introduces himself to her and kind of makes a fool of himself in the process, but at least he finally knows her name is Holly and definitely not something completely different. Byers tells his buddy to go take a break so he can look into this ARPANET thing. He ends up landing inside the Department of Defense and Holly's like, hey, can't you, oh I don't know, hack into a little old file for me? Fearing she might leave, Byers does exactly that. Imagine risking your entire future for a person you've known for what, maybe an hour? Holly tells him to look up Suzanne Modeski because that's the name of her daughter and definitely not her.
Why would your 3-year-old have an encrypted file in a secret Defense Department database?
Maybe she was one of those baby geniuses. Anyone else remember that stupid ass movie? You know, for some top secret files, they sure don't make it very difficult for any Joe Blow to just print them out. Holly then freaks out as her crazed kidnapping ex-boyfriend arrives at the convention. And it's Mulder? Yeah, Mulder, a man known for doing whatever he can to find his sister, would definitely be the kind of man to abandon his pregnant girlfriend and then abduct their 3-year-old child. Since they're in a bit of a pickle, they acquire the help of one Melvin Frohickey. I mean, who better to help decrypt some top secret government code?
It was at this point, however, that Mr. Frohickey raised an interesting question.
I don't understand. Why don't you just kick this guy's ass?
I love how the smallest member of the Lone Gunmen is also the one willing to throw hands. Holly's all, no, please, I just need the files decoded. But this doesn't stop Frohickey and Byers from leaving her and following Mulder. They're not very good at the whole espionage thing, however, because Mulder catches them almost immediately. Mulder asks the guys if they've seen Holly, but they both say no. He then takes out the biggest cell phone you've ever seen.
Yeah, Mulder. Oh, hey, Reggie. What's up?
One thing I love about this one are the little nods to things from the past. When the guys get back, Byers' buddy is being hauled off by the military because they think he's the one that hacked into the Defense Department. Poor guy was just playing some dig-dug. Byers nearly turns himself in, but Frohickey's like, what, are you stupid? A hacker never turns himself in. With all the craziness going on, they decide they need to know more about this Holly. And since the FBI is looking for her, then they need to hack into the FBI database. And there's only one person who's right for the job. Although he seems busy at the moment with a cash game of Dungeons and Dragons. Langley agrees to it because how often do you get to hack into the FBI? First they search for Mulder, who pops up as a lanky 6 feet and 170 pounds. Bro, you really need to start lifting weights. Next they try looking up Holly, but yield no results. However, when they look up her daughter Suzanne, oopsie, I guess she lied. Let's see, responsible for bombing of an AAW laboratory which killed 4 employees. Also the death of a military police officer who tried to detain subject at facility gate. Byers, my man, this is why you can't immediately jump in headfirst when a woman you don't know comes at you with a sob story.
Subject Modeski is considered unstable and delusional. Intellectually brilliant, yet prone to confabulation and fits of violent behavior.
Psychotic and profoundly paranoid.
She sounds like wife material to me. Suzanne enters the room, which causes the 3 men to sort of huddle in fear. Which is funny because Frohickey was all ready to fight Mulder, yet is terrified of this tiny woman. Instead of murdering the 3 men, she decides to come clean about who she really is, which must come off as such a relief to these guys. Turns out she doesn't actually have a daughter. She was basically using Byers so she could get this top secret info and expose the government for developing a gas that causes paranoia and anxiety, which they had planned on testing on the people of Baltimore. She then goes full Dale Gribble with conspiracy theories involving the government.
Guns don't kill people, the government does.
At this point, the Lone Gunmen aren't the guys we know them to be. Sure, they like to do their hacking and stealing of HBO, but they don't believe the government could be part of some deep, dark cabal. The guys don't exactly want to help her, but when she drops her gun, they kind of realize they don't have much choice.
Subject Modeski currently monitored around the clock. Covert electronics installed per Dr. Michael Kilburn, 11688. Who's Dr. Michael Kilburn?
The guys begin decoding this document, and it starts to dawn on them that she might actually be telling the truth. Not only has the government created this gas and are housing it in a nearby warehouse, but they've also been keeping tabs on Susan with a tooth implant. What I want to know is how she knew which tooth to pull. Since the tooth could still be monitoring them, they decide to flush it down the toilet. Next, they head to the warehouse where this apparent gas is being stored.
This is their random test. Now we've got proof.
Stay where you are. I'm a federal agent.
Mulder has impeccable timing. He's about to haul her in until some other guys show up to take her away, and everything goes to hell. Apparently this gas causes anxiety, paranoia, and the urge to remove one's clothing. Are we sure this was supposed to go to Baltimore and not Disney? The 2 men are about to finish Mulder off, which is a poorly worded sentence, until Susan quickly takes them out. Just then another group of men show up, and I'm not sure if they're related to the last 2 guys, but it doesn't matter because it's our boy X. You don't know how happy I am to see X. I just wish he could have stuck around more after this. The gas seems to work because Mulder is tripping balls. You know what's great? X is having his men clean up the scene, including throwing one of the men in a body bag who is still clearly alive, and the Lone Gunmen are allowed to just sit there and watch the whole thing go down. Byers makes a really dumb decision when he tries to question X about what he's doing, but luckily for him, X must have been having a good day, because usually in a situation like this, he would have just shot him.
John F. Kennedy? Dallas?
I heard it was a lone gunman.
They better give X a little credit for naming the group. Back to the present, which is still technically in the past, the Lone Gunmen are quickly released as Mulder was able to corroborate their story, or at least what little he can remember. I'm sure he left the part about the aliens out of it. As the guys are getting ready to leave, they learn that Mulder's car had been stolen and left by the train station. Byers figures it's Susan trying to throw the scent off her as she wanted to go public with the information. Instead, they think she'll be at the Baltimore Guardian, which is nearby the train station. And they're correct because that's exactly where she was.
They didn't believe my story. Not a word of it.
Well, I know of at least 4 people that would believe her. Suzanne leaves the men and is instantly abducted while absolutely no one around seems to react. Oh, a woman being kidnapped must be a Tuesday. Oh, cool. I didn't know they advertised the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Baltimore. The guys are understandably upset by what just took place, but Mulder meets up with them because he needs to know what the hell happened last night.
Secret elements within the United States government seek to surveil us and control our lives.
What?
Tell them about the hotel room Bibles.
I love the Unusual Suspects so much. The Lone Gunmen are some of my favorite characters in any TV show ever, and it's just great that they get an episode all to themselves. Well, mostly to themselves. Obviously, the reason for this is because the main stars of the show, David and Gillian, were out working on the X-Files movie, so they had to film something, but I think devoting an episode to the origin of the Lone Gunmen was a great idea. It's fun how they all start off hating one another and not even believing in things like conspiracies. Instead, you've got Byers who's working for the FCC and Frohicke and Langley who are competing with one another to see who can be the best hacker or the best at stealing cable. It's not until this whole mess with Suzanne where they finally realize that there just might be more going on behind the scenes than they originally thought. Even Mulder's brief appearance in this has him acting not quite like Mulder just yet. He's still just a typical by-the-book FBI agent at this point. I love the chemistry between the 3 men, and I think they really do well playing off one another. You've got Byers, who sort of becomes the de facto main character as he's more of the straight man. Langley, who's the goofy, nerdy guy that we all knew growing up. And by I knew, I mean, well, he was me. And then there's Frohicke, who's always been my personal favorite of the group. He has no problem being flirtatious with the ladies, and even willing to throw hands at a moment's notice. As much as I love this episode, I did find a review on IMDb from someone who really does not like it. This show starts out as a prequel to how and why Mulder met the Lone Gunmen, and it's just as awful as it sounds. Taking the focus anyway from the agents? Alright. They try and fail to make the Lone Gunmen interesting, a failure both cinematically and with a boring plot. The episode feels like filler for a group that is interesting as side characters, but giving them their own episode was a bad idea. I can't get over Mulder's fake hair and his complete uselessness to the plot. I love Mulder's hair in this. It's like they just patted it down to make him look younger, and it always makes me chuckle. It's like the writes, oops, misspelled writers, forgot how to write a good episode, and this is their dumpster fire. Yeah, that's the wrong there as well. This is X-Files' version of Spock's brain, and the show is awful. I give it a 3 because there are a few neat moments, but all around a forgettable episode. And no Scully? Terrible. And yeah, I review bombed the heck out of this one. You know, I want to tell this person to maybe just take a deep breath, but I have a feeling I may get even worse than this once we get to a certain episode in Season 7. The idea for the Lone Gunmen began way back before the series even began. Glenn Morgan and Marilyn Osborne, the writer for the episode Shapes, went to a UFO convention in 1993. There they found a table with 3 men, one guy dressed in a suit, another with long hair and a messy t-shirt, and the third had no description, so he must have been invisible. These 3 men didn't seem like much at first, but then started telling people about the magnetic strips in their money. Suddenly people all around started tearing their money up, searching for these strips. This stuck with Glenn Morgan and would eventually become the basis for the Lone Gunmen. When it came down to casting the Lone Gunmen, the role of Frohicke pretty much happened by chance. Tom Braidwood was the first assistant director on the X-Files, and as director William Graham was talking about who he wanted for the role, Braidwood walked by and Graham said, "We need somebody slimy, someone like Braidwood." When Braidwood came out of the bathroom, everyone looked at him and said, "Ah, Frohicke," and the rest is history. Dean Haglund, prior to the X-Files, was a stand-up comedian and had done a lot of improvisational theater. When he auditioned for the role, he had actually never seen the show and had no idea what he was getting himself into. He ended up getting the role after an audition over the phone and wouldn't end up meeting the other Lone Gunmen until they started filming the episode EBE. Like Dean, Bruce Harwood had no idea what the X-Files was. To be fair, the show had really only just started and hadn't really caught on with the public yet. He auditioned for the role and was called back almost immediately, saying he got the part. The Lone Gunmen were originally tossed in EBE as a one-off joke. They were never supposed to be anything more than a quick gag. However, producers started to hear buzz on the internet that fans of the show really liked the characters, so they were brought back in the episode Blood. From there, they only grew in popularity, so they ended up becoming recurring characters. Normally, side characters like the Lone Gunmen wouldn't be given their own episode, but because of the X-Files movie taking up most of the main cast, it was decided to film a show around the Lone Gunmen because the producers had to deliver something to Fox. Writer Vince Gilligan was given the rather difficult task of coming up with a story revolving almost entirely around the Lone Gunmen. Vince's first idea involved the use of nanotechnology and how it would affect the world around us. But as he continued pitching it to Chris Carter, Chris got more and more nervous. At the end of the pitch, Chris just looked at him and said, "Why don't you show us how the guys met?" This suddenly sparked something inside Gilligan, and from there, the rest of the story came together rather quickly. While he was writing the script, he realized he was framing the whole thing around Byers explaining to a detective what happened. This is when he thought he'd have a little fun and include Richard Belzer's Detective Munch from the very popular show Homicide. The only issue is Fox didn't own the rights to Homicide. Fortunately, when Gilligan wrote his first film, Wilder Napalm, he met producer Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson was a producing partner with Barry Levinson, who was the co-creator of Homicide. Mark contacted Barry about the crossover, and Barry passed it along to Homicide executive producer Tom Fantana. Tom loved the idea and gave the okay. Fox seemed to be happy with the deal, NBC seemed to be happy with the deal. The only ones who didn't really like it were the blood-sucking lawyers.
Thank you.
One thing this episode served to do was give the Lone Gunmen their full names. Frohicke would be Melvin Frohicke, Byers would be John Fitzgerald Byers, and in an early draft of the script, Langley was going to be Ringo Langley, but eventually it was settled on Richard Langley. The opening credits to the Lone Gunmen series, however, would show Ringo as a sort of nickname. Kim Manners, who directed the episode, recounted that Tom Braidwood hated the name Melvin for his character. When it came time for rehearsal, Tom apparently said, "I'm Mel Frohicke," and tried to make it sound macho. Kim had to pull Tom to the side and said, "Tommy, come here a minute. You're Melvin Frohicke. Learn to live with it." I don't know why this makes me laugh so much, but it just makes the whole show sound like a zoo. One of my favorite aspects of this episode is since it takes place years before Mulder and Scully met, they were able to bring X back. X is another one of my favorite characters in the show who probably should have had an episode all to himself. Imagine an episode all about the day in the life of X. That could have been pretty cool. His inclusion in this show is because they were stuck when it came to how they were going to end it. They needed there to be a reason why the assassin wouldn't just kill the Lone Gunmen and Mulder, and that's when they thought of including X. If the assassin is X, then they can keep him from killing Mulder and the Lone Gunmen, as they'll all become part of the agenda. This would be the last time we would see X until the series finale in season 9. One thing that riled up fans was when they noticed Mulder wearing a wedding ring. Later in the episode, when they search him up in the FBI database, it says he's single, but he can be seen throughout the show with a wedding band on. Fans thought maybe there was some deeper meaning to this, but no. David had been recently married and just wanted to troll the fans online. Unusual Suspects currently sits at 8.4 on IMDb. I'm a really big fan of these characters and this episode, and I'm stuck somewhere between an 8 and a 9. Up next, we have another great episode, as Mulder and Scully get a little sidetracked on their way to a team-building retreat and stumble upon several disappearances that may be caused by an invisible man in the episode Detour. So what do you think of Unusual Suspects? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope I see you in the next one, and stay spooky.
Why is a detective from another network tracking down extraterrestrials on Fox?
What I'm looking at here is an FBI agent likes to talk about space aliens.
Because it's the only place he can. An all-new X-Files, Sunday at 9, 8 Central. So many secrets, just one Fox.